Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey, and there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 372. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about perseverance and outdoor adventures. How outdoor adventures can help us with our sense of perseverance and what they can teach us about perseverance. This is a topic that's inspired by recent events, Bushcraft course that I recently took that I discussed a little bit in last week's episode with Joanna, but it's something that I've been really reflecting on lately and just really grateful for having had that experience and just really looking forward to seeing all the things that I can learn in the future from my outdoors experiences. So let's get into the topic. Perseverance. What is it? It's been defined as the persistence in doing something despite difficulty or challenge or delay in achieving success. And why is it important? Perseverance is so important because it helps you to finish your projects, achieve your goals, overcome rejection, stretch out of your comfort zone. It keeps you from giving up. And this is something that I talked about last week with Joanna in the episode that we did together on how to achieve overnight success, and that's overnight in air quotes, because of course there's no such thing. So we talked a lot about perseverance and why when we achieve goals, if we actually want to achieve them, we need to work and work and work and try and fail and try and fail and try something different and try something new. And it's all about persistence and perseverance and just keeping going. Oftentimes our goals are not easy to achieve. Oftentimes we make mistakes. Oftentimes we try one path and it doesn't work, so we have to try another path. And there are so many opportunities along the way to give up. And it's so easy to give up. You just say, I'm done, and then you walk away from it. And I'm going to talk about this later in the episode, but sometimes it's important to give up and you need to know when to give up. But let's assume that your goals are still important to you, that you still want to do these things. You can't just give up the first or the second or the third time that something doesn't work. You have to keep trying and you have to keep trying new things. And sometimes you get tired and sometimes you get frustrated and sometimes you need to walk away from a little bit and take a break and come back. But these are things that we can learn from our outdoors adventures. And I think that's why perseverance is one of the biggest things that I've learned from hiking, walking, doing long distance trails, and things like this Bushcraft course. So let's talk a little bit about some specific examples. And I'm sure as I tell these stories, you can think of examples in your own life. And hopefully this will inspire you to stretch yourself and grow and have new and different and more challenging outdoor adventures. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because my husband and I have been watching a lot of YouTube documentaries, videos about people running ultra marathons, particularly trail marathons rather than urban marathons. I've just been getting really inspired by them and thinking about how I can stretch myself, not just with running, but outdoors adventures. And I wrote a blog post on that recently. It's called Best Outdoor Sports Documentaries and Films Get Motivated Again. And I've got a list there of some of my favorite ones. I need to add to it though, because we keep watching these documentaries and videos. But I really got into this during the time when I was having really low energy and fatigue from Lyme disease. And I wasn't exercising. I wasn't getting outdoors. I wasn't doing much. And I just felt really bleh. And it really got me motivated to kind of get back on track with my fitness and my outdoor adventures once my energy levels got up and running again. So yeah, so that's where I am. That's where I'm coming from with all of this. And I just find it really, really useful to hear other people's stories and hear about their adventures and see how they stretch themselves, because it gives me new ideas. It helps me see new possibilities for myself. Maybe I'll never run an ultramarathon. Who knows? But I can apply those mindset and those principles to my own life and to my own outdoor adventures. And perseverance is such an important quality to me, because if I hadn't persevered with all of the things that I wanted to achieve, I wouldn't be where I am today. If I don't continue to persevere and work towards my goals, I'm not going to achieve the goals that I have set for myself. And I'm not going to create the life that I want to create for myself. So perseverance is just so important to me. Looking back on my journey over the last 10 years, particularly, there's so many times when I could have given up. There's so many times when I could have just said, you know what, I'll just stay where I am. This is okay. It's tolerable. And keeping going is too hard. So I'm very grateful for my own perseverance in the past, because it's gotten me to where I am today. So let's talk about examples. So like day hikes. You go out for a day hike, you plan a route, or not, or you just wander around. But particularly when you plan a route that's longer than what you're used to. There have been several times on my day hikes where I've been tired, I've just not felt like I had a lot of energy, not really felt like I wanted to go on, maybe I had blisters, maybe my feet were hurting, and I still had to get to my destination, which was the end of the walk that I had planned. And, a lot of times when you're out walking in nature, there are escape routes. Like there are ways, like if you look at a map, you can kind of get to a road faster and maybe call a taxi. But a lot of times you can't. And so you just have to keep going. And of course, unless you're injured, ideally, I would want to keep going and complete the route that I had planned for myself, even when it's hard. So what do? Stop, evaluate where I am, evaluate how far I have to go, think about how long it's going to take me to get there, and take a break. Have some tea, have some water, have a snack, have something to chew on, like if you have like gum or candies or I don't know, something to give you sugar. I mean, I'm not a big eater of sugar and I'm not a big fan of eating sugar and carbs when I'm exercising, but that is a common thing that people do for energy. Stop, take a break, reevaluate, figure out where you are, reevaluate like where you want to be, because you always can take an escape route. Well, not always, but oftentimes you can. You could find a road, find a way to go, and get out of there. Or you can continue. So evaluate what's important. Like, is finishing the route still important to you? Is that your only option? If it is, then figure out what your strategy is going to be. So maybe a lot of times, I used to really push through on my walks and I would just walk really fast. And then I would burn myself out because I didn't take enough breaks. And then I learned to take more breaks. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in my book, Alone on the South Downs Way, is that I learned to take rests and take breaks early and often. So I was stopping for like a rest break about once an hour sometimes. And that was just kind of to, stretch out the day and to stay rested and to rest my feet and maybe take off my shoes and cool off my feet. But more than anything, it was about just resting before I burnt myself out and making sure that I stayed at a good pace for myself. So even if I wasn't pacing myself very well, having those early and often rest stops helped me to prevent burnout by, not pacing myself very well. So I hope that made sense. I feel like I kind of rambled on about that, but yeah, taking rest stops early and often. So if you're at a point in the trail where you're like, really exhausted, I can't wait to get to the end, just take more rest stops. Take more rest stops. And then maybe focus on things like taking photographs, because that'll help you slow down and that'll give you something to distract yourself. So maybe keep an eye out for photographs that you want to take. You can take pictures and share them to Instagram or share them on other social networks, because that'll give you a little pause and that will distract you. Things like that are really good strategies for kind of slowing down, pacing yourself, and getting through the end of a hike that's maybe difficult. And again, take breaks. Make sure you're hydrated. Make sure your electrolytes are good. And that's especially important if you practice intermittent fasting like I do. Just really keep up on your hydration and your electrolytes. And just think about what you need to do to keep going. Maybe it is listening to a podcast or listening to music. I really don't like listening to music when I'm walking or anything. Partly it doesn't make me feel safe. Partly it kind of distracts me from my surroundings. And it's not why I go out into nature. But if that's going to get you through your day hike, do it. And the same goes for long distance trails. Plenty of people listen to music when they're out. Obviously, if you're in an area where you have dangerous wildlife, I don't know. I would really not listen to music or podcasts or anything, or you could just leave one earphone out and listen to it on one side. But it's always important when you're outdoors to stay aware of your surroundings. Again, if you need some music to get yourself through, give it a try. That is an aid to getting through a challenging point in your trail. The same goes for walking long distance trails. I mean, when you're walking multiple days in a row, the tiredness builds up in your body, the poor pacing, if that's a problem for you, builds up in your body, and it can lead to, meltdown in some cases, like it did for me in my first South Downs adventure, which I talk about in my book. But it can just lead to tiredness and irritability and a sense of frustration. Because especially when you have a longer goal like that, whether it's a weekend walk or where you're walking 2 or 3 days in a row, or a week-long walk, or something even longer, multiple weeks, it's a bigger goal. And so sometimes it feels like you have more invested in it because it's harder to quit. And you're going to be perhaps less likely to want to quit than you would with just a day hike. So I think it's especially important to kind of pace yourself, take breaks, do what you need to do to get through it, but also reevaluate what you need to do to enjoy it, because there's no sense in walking a long distance trail if you're going to be miserable every day. So stop and identify what's making you miserable and how to get through it and enjoy it. What would make you happier about the journey? What would make you enjoy it more? And then do those things. And the same goes for running. And running is something that it's harder for me to persevere with. I used to be a really good runner, and then I got to this point where I was kind of giving up on my runs and just not pushing through. And I know that when I push through the pain when I'm running, and not pain, I don't mean like injury pain, but like the tiredness and I know that it's temporary. I know that there's a great thing on the other side, usually. But I'd gotten into this habit of just stopping and quitting, or like alternating runs and walks just to get through the run. And sometimes, you might need to do that. But I was getting really frustrated with my ability to persevere on my runs. And I actually just had this really great session with Cara Wild, whom you've heard on the podcast before, where we're looking at my life values. So we did one of those values sessions that we talked about, and I will link to the episode where we talked about values and how important they are. But so we're doing a session on my life values, and what came up was this horrible memory, this shameful memory that I had where I gave up and quit on a marathon that I was running. And that just set me up for some really bad beliefs about myself. And this happened more than 20 years ago. And it's really affected my fitness and my running ever since. So it's like I've been able to persevere with some things in the outdoors and fitness stuff, but I haven't with other things. And I'm really looking forward to seeing I mean, I've already felt a huge shift in myself since that session, but I'm really looking forward to seeing, now that I'm stretching myself more with my running, where that's going to take me. So I've already started to persevere more with my running. So there's so many different ways that you can pay attention to your mindset and stretch yourself and really persist and persevere in your outdoors adventures and in your outdoors fitness and all kinds of fitness. But pay attention to your mindset. And I think this is a really, really important mindset thing, is sticking to your goal and doing what you need to do to complete it in a pleasant way. Yeah, it's not always going to be pleasant. Sometimes you're going to be running long distance or hiking long distance and it's going to be miserable for times. But sometimes, if you push through the miserable bit, it will be beautiful again. It's like when you're practicing intermittent fasting or extended fast and your stomach starts growling, which you may sometimes hear on this podcast. So it's like I get hungry and I start thinking about food, but then, I have a drink of water, I have some salt, and it goes away. When you're fasting, hunger isn't like a little bit of hunger and then more and more and more and more and more and more until you're like, It's not like that. Like, it comes and goes in waves. And, hopefully when you're pushing yourself or you're persevering in your outdoors adventures and other things in life, that difficulty, that challenge bit should come in waves. It should be like, I push through this difficult part and then it gets easier. And then you get another difficult part and then it gets easier. If it's just endless horribleness, that's when you really need to reevaluate and stop and think, is it time to give up? But before I talk about giving up, I also wanted to talk about my recent experience with this advanced bushcraft course that I took, which I will link to in the show notes. About halfway through this course, I think, or maybe it was even earlier than that, I was working on something and I realized, you know what? I'm not a crafty person. Like, I'm not a person who's good with crafty stuff. And yet I'm taking this course in bushcraft where we had to create stuff out of wood. Like, we had to go and chop down a tree and carve a spoon from it. Then we had to, cut down some other wood and use it to build a bow drill set. Then we had to do that horrible bow drill, which was just so incredibly frustrating. And if you don't know what a bow drill is, it's a method of creating fire by friction. And so the course was challenging, and of course the assessment was even more challenging, and it was just really frustrating. And there were so many times where I wanted to give up. There were so many times where I thought, well, you know what? Like, the instructors have said, I don't have to do it this weekend. Like, if I pass everything else, then I can just go home and practice this at home and do a video. But I didn't want to do that. Really didn't want to do that. I wanted to go home having done it. And so I just kept at it, and I accepted help, which was important. I've not been good about that in the past, but how much help was offered. People were really supportive. I accepted help. I kept going. I practiced during all of the breaks, and eventually with much help and assistance, I got it in the end and I passed. So that was so extremely satisfying. And I just felt good about myself. But it would have been so easy to give up. There were so many opportunities to give up. I wanted to give up at times. And the same with walking long distance trails. The first time I walked the South Downs Way, I seriously thought about quitting at one point. I eventually didn't, because I went to bed, got up the next morning, felt a lot better, and just kept going. But I wanted to quit at times. So I think now it's time to talk about when to quit, because sometimes quitting is the right option, like how to know when to give up. I think there are times in your journey when, you hit that challenging point, that difficult bit, where you need to stop and reevaluate and think, is this goal still important to me? Is it important to me to complete this day hike? Is it important to me to continue this long distance trail? Is it important to me to finish this course? So I learned a lot of things in the course. I didn't need to get the certificate at the end. I could have just taken what I learned and been like, great, that's good. I learned a bunch of good stuff. But I really wanted that sense of completion from getting the certificate, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. So stop and reevaluate. Is it really important? Is it still important to you to achieve this goal? And reevaluate regularly, because especially in life goals, there are times where our goals change, our priorities change, and some stuff is no longer important to us. So you need to stop and reevaluate. It's like I'm doing that now with my business mindset book series. One of the things that was really important to me about rewriting that series was because the books sold pretty well in their first edition, but I wanted to make them available in different editions because they were just ebooks. So I wanted to make them available in paperbacks and workbooks and audio, and I wanted to improve them because I thought they could be improved upon. And that was really important to me, and I wanted to re-release them. And I've done that for 2 out of 4 of them. Third book is ready to be published. I'm going to publish it once I get back from the Ridgeway. But the first 2 aren't selling. They're really not selling. And I've had great feedback from the new editions. I've had, great reviews of them, but they're just not selling well. And so I've had to stop and reevaluate. Like, am I going to finish this? Am I not? And what I've decided at this point, and I may reevaluate this again before the year is out, is I need to change my name. So I think I'm messing up the Amazon algorithm by using the same name for my nature books as I am for my business mindset book. So I'm just adding my middle initial, and I'm going to be relaunching those books with that, and I'm going to see if that helps. So when I get back from the Ridgeway, I'm going to relaunch, I'm going to publish for the first time the second edition of Business Visibility. I'm going to relaunch the first 2 with that new name. Hopefully that will help. So once I've done that, I'm going to reevaluate whether it's worth my time and effort to update the 4th book in the series, which is Business Intuition. I'm pretty sure at this point I'm going to do it. I just might not put as much effort into it as I did with the first 2 books. We shall see. So again, stop, reevaluate. Is the goal still important to you? It is important to me because I want to have that sense of completion, of updating them, but I might change the project. So I'm probably not going to do audiobooks for the last 2 books like I did for the first 2. I know a lot of people really like audiobooks, but again, they're really not selling that well. So I need to evaluate whether it's worth my time. Also, doing audiobooks it's a lot of effort. So, and it's just really difficult. So if it's not selling, I don't want to put that effort into it. So again, those are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself when you're reevaluating your goals. Always check in, see if the goal is still important to you, and kind of imagine what it would be like. So when I was walking my South Downs Way and I was thinking about giving up, I thought about what it would be like if I gave up. And I called my husband and I said, pick me up tomorrow. I need a ride home. I'm going to quit. And I didn't feel good. I really didn't like the feeling of that. I really liked the feeling of completing my walk, which is what I ended up doing. Same with the Bushcraft. I stopped and I kind of daydreamed, visualized what it would be like to go home without having completed the bow drill flame, and how I would feel about myself, and what that would be like, and would I really put the effort into achieving that on my own without all of the support from the other people? Probably not. How would it feel to have completed that course but not have gotten the certificate? So that was another thing that pushed me on. So also kind of daydream or visualize what it would be like for you to give up. Like, what does that path look like to you? Where does that path lead? Do you like that path? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. But there are times when your priorities have changed, your goals have changed, your interests have changed, and your original goal is no longer important for you. So you need to either give up or reevaluate or change the project or change the goal so it's more suited to your needs now, or your interests, or your wants. And as I've said, some of the things that really helped me get through that Bushcraft assessment was accepting help and taking a break. I took a lot of breaks, and I didn't practice intermittent fasting for those 2 days. I just ate whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I ate comfort foods. I usually try to stay high fat, low carb, mostly keto when I'm even when I'm camping and going on these courses, and I do practice intermittent fasting. But I didn't, because I knew my stress levels for completing that bow drill assessment were going to be really high. And I thought, you know what? I just want to eat the foods I want to eat when I want to eat and not add that extra stress and worry to my week or the 2 days of the assessment. So also think about what things you can do to reduce other stresses on yourself. So maybe if you're really working hard toward a goal and you're getting really frustrated and it's getting really difficult, like maybe there are other goals where you can either drop them or postpone them, change the completion date, let go of other projects, or just let go of things that aren't important to you. So maybe you decide that the main goal or this particular goal is super important to you, but you let go of other things or you postpone them to give yourself more time and energy and to put the effort into this primary goal. Frustration is also a big part of it. Like I found it really frustrating to just try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. And, you know, again, sometimes you just need to take a break, have a snack, have some comfort food or whatever, and then try again and get help and try again. Frustration, I think sometimes is a part of the journey when we're doing these difficult and challenging things, whether it's in life or in outdoor adventures. And I think perseverance is something that can help us with frustration. Like when we have persevered and when we've achieved things, it gives us the confidence to do it again and again and again and to try for bigger things and try for different things. And that's one of the reasons why I keep doing these outdoor adventures. That's one of the reasons why I keep doing these long distance trails and these courses that totally take me outside of my comfort zone. Because I learn perseverance, because I learn how to work through frustration, because I learn so many things about myself and I stretch outside of my comfort zone and I learn to not give up and I learn how to do things differently and so I can achieve my goals, not just in these outdoor adventures, but in life. Because I think that every time I achieve one of my goals or my projects or my journeys in the outdoors, it helps me with my life. It helps me to persevere in my life. It helps me to finish my projects and achieve my goals and stretch outside of my comfort zone and keep from giving up in my day-to-day life. It helps me to create the life I want to live because I know I can do it, because I've done it before. In my outdoors adventures, in my hikes, in my walking, and my courses. And it just really helps me to grow as a person, and it makes other aspects of my life easier because, as I've said 1,000 times, we're talking about comfort zone, and I did a podcast episode about this recently. So if you want to learn about your comfort zone, episode 369, I talk about getting out of your comfort zone with outdoor adventures. When you stretch your comfort zone in a particular area, you will stretch it in other areas of your life. And I just feel like for the last 10 years, I've been stretching and stretching and stretching my comfort zone, and I've grown in so many ways. So I would like to invite you today to think about how you can reflect on perseverance and how you can improve your perseverance and your persistence in your outdoor adventures and also in life. It's just something to be aware of. Because when I became aware of that during my Bushcraft course, it really helped me to keep going. It just really motivated me. And I've signed up for some ultra walks next year that I'm not sure if I'm ready to share about on social media, but you are hearing about it first. There's one in April, I think it is, and one in September, but some long distance walks, but like in one go. And that's going to be a massive stretch for me. And it's going to be a massive stretch outside of my comfort zone because for the last 5 years, I've been walking slowly. I've been taking breaks. I've been resting early and often. And the things that I'm going to be, the challenges that I've set forth for myself next year, they're going to be different. They're going to totally be outside my comfort zone. I'm going to have to train for them, but it's a very different kind of walking. And my normal slow-paced let's enjoy the journey. Walking is not going to be replaced by these ultra adventures, but this is going to be a new thing, I think we shall see, in addition to my normal slow-paced walking. We'll see how it goes. You will find out more next year once I do it. And hopefully I'll be sharing some of the journey with you as I train for these here on the podcast and on the blog. So that's it for now. I hope you found this interesting and useful, and I hope it gives you something to reflect on. Another related episode that, if you haven't listened to it, I think you might enjoy is 364, where I talk about personal growth through outdoor adventure, and that's just personal growth in general. Both of those episodes that I mentioned, 369, 364, now have downloadable transcripts. As always, about a week or two after an episode goes live, the transcripts are available on my website. You can just read them straight up on my website, or you can download the transcripts in a PDF, and that is with no opt-in required. I don't ask you to give me your email address. You can just click the link and download it for free. And that's just because, I don't know, sometimes when I'm listening to other podcasts, I find it really challenging to take in the information. I'm not good at receiving information through my ears, so sometimes when I'm learning something, I want to go back and read what I just listened to so I can really take on the information. So that's why. So hope you found this interesting and useful. I would like to challenge you to reflect on this and think about how you persevere in your outdoors adventures and in life, and how you can stretch yourself even more. So like maybe come up with one stretch goal for your outdoors adventures that you would like to plan either for the next week, month, or year, and share it with me. Email me at holly@hollyworton.com and let me know what your goal is. I would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean the world to me. And I just got an email from someone the other day asking me how to review on Apple Podcasts. So I've done a couple of videos, which I will link to in the show notes, on how to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, both on the desktop or on the mobile app. So that's all for now. And remember to visit hollyworton.com/372 for the show notes on this episode, and in a couple of weeks, the transcript. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.